we have with us Mr. Danny. Mr. Danny, the stage is all yours. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for the coolest and the most happening speaker of the day. A big round of applause for him.
71% of millennials would rather go to the dentist than go to a bank. Now, that for me is a huge problem because millennials who are going to inherit the world feel so dissociated with their bank. And the reason why is that millennials are natural-born YouTubers. They capture and share their life on Instagram. They click on a button, a car picks them up, and they swipe right, and you know what happens. And if you don't, maybe the stock is not for you. Now, if you compare that to opening a bank, to open a bank, you need to go to a physical location, take a number, wait in line, talk to a human, and more often than not, they will ask you to come back on opening hours, and maybe there's a lot of more paperwork to do. So today, I want to shed some light on why this happened, what to do about it, and how to go about it. So the problem is that banks stopped innovating. But if you really look at it, there's an interesting study by Oliver Wyman on transportation, where they compare the transportation, which is an important sector in our lives, with banking. And they zoomed in on the last 15 years. And what they figured out is that in the transportation business, there has been like 5 systemic changes. The first one is printable directions from home. The second is having your personal GPS in your car. The third is Google Maps and Apple Maps. And you know what? I mean, personally, I don't know how we used to do it before. The fourth systemic change is Waze, where now people can input their feedback on if there's traffic, if there's a police car, if there's an accident. And the fifth and the most important is the on-demand ride-hailing. So you got your Ubers, you got your Lyfts, and now the sixth one is driverless cars. In 2 to 3 years, we are on track to start delivering an autonomous level 5 connected car, which means there will not be any traffic stops. Every car will talk to cars will talk to each other, and they will give rights of passage automatically. So if you compare it to our industry, banking, since we invented money, we started storing our money under the pillow. And that was 5,000 years ago. No, sorry, 5,000 years BC. Fast forward 6,400 years, 2 people started exchanging their money in Italy on a bench, hence the word bank, banco. And 30 years later, you got your first big bank, the Medici Bank. Since then, I can build an argument that there was no systemic real change in the banking industry. Yes, there was SWIFT, but banks started mushrooming because it was a good business model. Until 2015, nothing really happened in the industry, although it grew big and powerful, and it became the cornerstone of our lives. Now, why are banks not designed to innovate? Because to innovate means that you need to fail. And innovation in itself, by definition, is trying stuff, breaking stuff, and failing. So banks are too big to fail. And if you look at, say, SpaceX, it had 3 spectacular failures before it got to become SpaceX. Now, practically, nobody wants to have their bank fail that spectacularly. So I would also argue that banks are too big to succeed. If you look at it, banks have streamlined their operation. You know, a banker has done exactly this year what he has been doing last year. And probably they will be doing 90% of what he has been doing this year, next year. But if you compare it to startups, which is the hub of innovation, it's totally different. Today is very different than yesterday, and definitely different than tomorrow, let alone a span of 1 year. So what happened is that under the pressure of growth, banks started saying, okay, if we build it, they will come. And they started flashing their money on and with big targets and trying to just throw money at it. So they would buy platforms, put their logo on it, build an app, pay for marketing, and wait for their customers. But those customers will never come. And for me, it's like filling a bucket. It's time-consuming, money-consuming, and resource-consuming. So what they happen is that now they have a hole in their balance sheet, and what they did is they start to pay consultant to fix it. So they started to go through digital transformation and learn agile. But they're not really playing on their strength. So to add insult to injury, regulations, which was the biggest thing that banks used to hide behind to not innovate, became friendly. Now you have a lot of regulations that help startups catch up, like open banking. Now, so we have open banking, which forces banks to have open APIs and integrate with third parties on the fly, provided we have customer consent. So we have the technology, and I can also build an argument that with eKYC, there is no banking transaction that needs to be spatial. What does it mean? It means that now you can have your bank on the cloud, and you have so many challenger banks that are mushrooming and coming about. You have Revolut, you have N26, you have Chime Bank in the US, you have Nu Bank in Brazil. If you look at it, you have, in China alone, there's one bank called Ant Financial, a digital bank that has 700 million users. And in the rest of the world, you have 10 million users with a valuation of more than 20 billion. So those banks are more convenient, much cheaper, and way, way, way faster. So if you look at it, so that was 2015, the rise of the challenger bank. But what happens now? I mean, now you still don't have one major player. Like, you don't have the Amazon of the world. And what can we do to figure out how to get to the next step in building the future of the bank? So you don't have an Amazon, but you have one Alibaba. So the market is still open for one dominant player. So we at Bankiom started thinking how to design for that bank of the future. I mean, everything now is streamlined, even for startups. You have so many eKYC solutions. You have so many core banking platforms. You have so many payment platforms. All you need is to weave them into a platform, into a product that resonates with your customers. So that was our mission. Our mission was how to understand our customers. So the first thing is we needed to talk to the customers. But my advice is don't ask them what do they want. You know, the famous Henry Ford used to say, if I had asked my customers what do they want, they would have told me faster cars, faster horses, sorry. So build that relationship, because banks have failed to build that relationship. I mean, I can argue also that there are two relationships between banks and their customers. If you are rich, there's a lot of ass kissing, and if you are poor and you default, there's a lot of ass kicking. But in the middle, the silent 80%, there is no relationship. So at Bankiom, we talked with 500 millennials. And our goal was to figure out what was that missing sauce. What was that thing that will take us to from the MP3 player to the iPhone, from the smartphone to the iPhone, from the electric car to Tesla? What is one thing that will take us from the digital to Instagram? What would be that one thing that will take us from being just another warehouse of money to the bank of the future? And we think we found it. We talked to so many millennials, and we figured out that the one thing that we need to have as our secret sauce is happiness. At Bankiom, we think that to build the bank of the future, we need to design for happiness. Now, before I tell you how we came about this, I want to define what happiness is. So let's understand what happiness is. Mo Gaudat, who is the author of the book Design for Happy, and he is the chief business officer of Google X, says that humans are born happy. Our default setting is happiness. But what changes with time is all the things that are added on in our lives. The expectations, the problems, the anxieties, these make us unhappy. And he goes to argue that happiness is actually the absence of unhappiness. And there's another study that looked at all the top-rated happy countries in the world, the Scandinavian countries, the Nordic countries, and what they figured out is that happiness is having the flexibility to pursue what you love. Happiness is earned success. Happiness is the ability to be generous, and happiness is being able to gift. So in 1978, there was this very interesting study that looked at all the winners of the lotto. And they figured out that after 6 months, they were less happy than before winning the lotto. So why is that? Because money wears off. Money does not make you happy. And as the famous author of our times, Mr. Kanye West, said, having money is not everything. Not having it is. So not having money makes you unhappy. So after talking to those 500 millennials, and we couldn't not ask them what do they want. And what we found out that everybody wants to be famous. Everybody wants to be rich. But when you dig deep in that relationship, you figure out that there's a lot of anxiety. Anxiety of the future. In fact, 57% would prefer not to look at their SMS notification after they pass half of the month. You know why? Because they don't want to deal with their low balance, remaining balance. And you find also fear of the future. 63% of those we talk to have no idea what they want to become in the future. And there's a lot of indifference. They don't care. And 52% have answered they don't care for what do they want to become after 10 years. So we identified 3 main emotions that we need to design for: anxiety, fear, indifference. So how can we turn those off? How can we design so that there is no anxiety, no fear, and switch indifference with care? So we at Bankiom have created 3 modes: the save mode, the wealth mode, and the gift mode. With the save mode, we are developing a machine learning software that can start automatically in the background provision to make sure that you are good by the end of the month. It provisions money so that you can pay your rent, pay your bills, pay your electricity without even asking you. So at the end of the month, we got you. The wealth mode is we link you to a robo-advisory that automatically allows you to passively invest in the stock market so that you have that flexibility to change your career. You have that flexibility to pursue what you want to do. And within 5 to 6 years, you have enough money to take 6 months off. You have enough money to travel the world. And the third one, which is caring. I believe in the gifting economy. I believe that if we can design an algorithm that can match people together so that they take care of each other anonymously. Just if we know that you received a big payday, we just tell you, you know what, there's somebody who's struggling in making their ends meet. Can you help out? $100. And if we create that circle, that virtuous circle, we can create this bond within our bank. We can build that relationship that the banks have failed to build. So our default setting at Bankiom is happy mode. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Danny Abla, and today I'm asking you to join me in spreading happiness in the world through your banking platforms. Thank you. Questions?
Brilliant. Thank you so much. It was scintillating. Interest is that you put millennial and you put some stats. Those stats of millennials might be different in the geographies. Do you agree with me?
Definitely.
Now, if this is the case, then basically the whole definition of be happy would also tend to be a little different from place to place.
Very true.
Okay. Now, such a brilliant way of confining towards what bank missing and what your concept could bring it, but also have variation to it. And I can talk, I'm coming from Saudi Arabia, so I can talk about the millennials in Saudi Arabia. And I have the stats to basically back with them. And I can feel that there is a lot of synergies, but there are got to be differences. How you tackle with this when this concept could be global, not just in a region?
So for me, the millennials, by and large, have a lot of commonalities. But that doesn't mean that every person has their own culture, their own background, their own surrounding, and they are affected by it. But at the first phase, we can't get into the specificities of each. Having said that, and since you mentioned Saudi Arabia, our first non-European country is going to be either Saudi or the UAE. And so we have some understanding about the profile of millennials in Saudi and in the UAE, because part of the 500 people that we talked to, 50 are from Saudi and the region. So okay. It's not far-fetched what the results that I can tell you from what we have seen is that there are very similar drivers in all the answers.
I can take, some more offline discussion, but it's very interesting, yeah.
Yes, definitely.
Any other question, ladies and Good afternoon. Thank you for the presentation. Very lively, very colorful. I have a question on the challenges that you might have faced with the regulations, especially on onboarding and KYC requirements. How are you finding it difficult or easy to adapt, or try to meet the requirements of the regulator in this space, together with a completely digital bank?
So, other people have done it, and you have to be smart about it. For example, if you look at Live, the regulations in the UAE is still not designed for challenger banks. But what they did is that one of the biggest impediment for this was that a bank officer needs to meet with the client. So they were smart about it. What they did is they went to Fetcher and they put every one on their payroll at 1 dirham. So now when they go to deliver your card, they see you. And that is a part of the KYC. The rest is because on your ID you can take a picture, and Live is connected to all the mainly to the main KYC system in Dubai. Now, outside of Dubai, outside of the UAE, outside of the region, eKYC has become a commodity. You have a lot of eKYC companies, and like on Fido, like Jumio, like EUID, like Gemalto, and all of them are linked to 195 countries on the passport level, and maybe 150 countries on the ID level. And basically any piece of ID that has Latin words, they are connected to. So it's not that of a big problem now. eKYC has unlocked a lot of value in the banking system. Now, so with us, you do an eKYC, which is a liveness check, a security check, an authenticity check, which means that we make sure that the piece of ID that you have taken a picture of is authentic. The liveness check, we need to make sure that you are the person that is registering. And the EML and security check, we need to know that if you are on any PEP or any terrorist list or any AML list. And this all takes 30 seconds.
Hi, my name is Sharif, and I'm going to put this blame on the excellent lunch that we had because I sort of didn't understand, the presentation. Reason being, I come from a banking background, and I want to understand, in terms of functionalities or the ways that how different is this from a normal bank. Because, the things like eKYC, analytics, business intelligence, WhatsApp banking, which is now, is all offered by the bank at least 4 or 5 years back. Way back, I should say in 2015, there was this concept, you just open your phone and your bank account is opened, okay? You want to talk to your manager, video conferencing, we do that, okay? You want to have conversations and then they need to access your system, we do that. These are functionalities available with the bank much, much earlier, okay? So I want to know, in terms of functionality, what is it or how is it that you're different from a bank that's offering?
Okay, the major problem with your question is that you're focusing on functionalities. And that's not how you're gonna win, man. Functionalities, because I'm gonna give you an example. Suppose you have 10 features and 1. Let's compare those. If you have 10 features in the best case scenario, you will be able to do 8 good and 10 average, okay? But if you have one functionality, you can focus on making it insanely good. You can obsess about it so that this would be your driver. And this is what banks are failing to understand, is that products in the digital economy are laser focused. Look at Instagram. Instagram, they started off with you can do anything, share with your friends, and then they focused on laser focused on one thing, sharing moments, sharing pictures. And this is how you win. Look at WhatsApp. All you do is just chat with someone. So in the process of delivering everything, you end up delivering mediocre products. I just want to tell you one thing. Anybody uses Emirates NBD for business? And anybody uses Live? So Live is Emirates NBD's digital bank. And Emirates NBD's business are owned by the same entity. But what Emirates NBD was smart about it is that they created a silo and they created a bank called Live that is owned by Emirates NBD, but that is totally operated as an independent entity. And you can tell the difference. This is amazing and this is very frustrating. And because security, because of, you could tell that we are obsessed about delivering features without looking at the journey and without really living the product so that it really resonates with you as a consumer. Did I answer you?
So this future of bank is something living in a yoga center. Be happy.
Yes, yes,
Right.
yes,
Okay.
yes, because all the features that you can come up with will work. But look at the industry before the iPod. You had so many MP3 players, but then came iPod and set the standard. 1,000 songs in your pocket, a slick design that everybody wanted to have. But the technology wasn't new. You had so many Sony products and Sanyo products and that played the music, but that wasn't it. Sometimes you have the first mover's advantage like Amazon did. Sometimes but most of the time to win, you have to really understand your customer. You have to obsessively think about their problems and how to solve those problems in the best possible way.
So thank you for the presentation, and great that everybody wants to be happy. You know, hopefully the whole world will be based on that. Just a quick question in regards to, so the concept of simplicity is excellent, right? You know, in your parallel discussion about Apple and, you know, the new vision that brought. However, in my life, I worked with quite a lot of challengers and fintechs and I guess neobanks and digital banks as they come in along. So on the user interface, and I think this is a sale point that you're trying to do, or the concept you're trying to share, it always looks great. However, on the back end, a lot of times, the architecture, you will probably work with multiple different providers. You might be different, you might be having your own end-to-end. A lot of challengers, I would say, you know, now it's changing, but back then, you will have a very legacy manual processes on the back. So what customers viewing is the one thing, but architecturally, it's no different, you know, that majority of traditional banks. And then I guess the question that I wanted to pose to you, because of the architectural design that you showed us in the beginning of the presentation, it's great to be on a cloud, it's great to be integrated through the APIs, but a lot of times having techie mind and the functionality designed for the user creates misleading architecture and then connectivity between different providers through the APIs. And from the risk perspective, somebody asked a question before, from the risk perspective, that creates a silo. And what we've seen with quite a few actually Australian banks and the global banks, one glitch in a software can create downturn and impact all type of processes because again, everything operates through the APIs. So how does this impact not only compliance and risk perspective, but then also your KYC, but then more so transaction monitoring, screening perspective and so forth? That kind of has a cascade design. And so just going back to kind of summarizing all the points I've talked about, we always want to have happiness driving us, simplicity ideally for the user and or backend, but then also what's the connectivity and the architecture. How do you manage that in your organization? How do you ensure that your booking mechanism through simple one or more features connects to all of the downstreams and making sure that you're fully compliant, not only on the KYC perspective, but across all of your compliance, risk, and other events?
Long question. Okay.
It was a feedback with a question.
So first, you got to decide on your core banking platform. So with us, we went to Ubiquity after we looked at so many platforms out there. And I had to vet each and every one of them because we think that having a flexible core platform that has all the security risk incorporated but has open APIs, with our platform, you can have conversational banking in an afternoon. But Bankiom decided not to have conversational banking. There's a lot of things that we say no to just because we are so obsessive about what to deliver to the customer. And delivering the happiness is our mission. So every product that we have has to be designed to deliver happiness. Now, the security part and the architecture part is all solved in the back end that you will never see. I mean, you probably, maybe you don't, but I don't, for example, don't know how emails work, and I don't care. What I care is when I click on send, somebody's gonna see it. And when somebody sends me an email, I can open it. As a consumer, we don't wanna understand what happens in the back end. All we need to do is, all we want is to know that the send button works and the type button works and the save button works.